Hello, everyone, and welcome to EVs, How to Compete as a Dealer in an Evolving Electrified Landscape. My name is Dave Versical. I am the Chief of Editorial Operations for the Automotive News Group, and I'd like to thank every one of you for joining us today. Our two hosts are Spectrum Reach Automotive and IHS Markit. Spectrum Reach is the advertising sales business of Charter Communications. Charter is a leading broadband connectivity company and cable operator serving more than 31 million customers in 41 states through its Spectrum brand. IHS Markit probably needs no introduction to many of you. It delivers data-driven automotive solutions and services spanning the entire value chain, from concept design to sales to marketing and all the way to the aftermarket. Our speakers are Ben Van Horn and Kristin Lundbeck from Spectrum Reach and the iconic Tom Libby from IHS Markit. The coins have been tossed, and it's Ben who is going to get us started. Welcome, Ben.
Hey, thanks, Dave. Appreciate it. As Dave mentioned, we're Spectrum Reach Automotive, and we actually operate in 94 markets across the country, reaching millions of households and connecting consumers with our advertising partners. At the end of the day, we are local experts. We live and work in your neighborhoods, and we understand your communities. And our job is to help you grow your business by reaching all audiences on any device, anywhere, with proven performance. So let's start talking about what we can expect to learn today. If you want to go to the next slide. So first, Tom Libby is going to speak about some interesting new trends that we're seeing as it relates to electric vehicles, or we'll be referring to as EVs, as well as internal combustion engines, or ICE vehicles, in terms of demand and sales across the country. Then we're going to show you how you can use the power of media to find and then convert those consumers into buyers. And lastly, I'll share some insights on the importance of reaching multicultural audiences in your communities. Before we jump into the presentation, I did want to let you all know if you have any questions or any requests for information throughout the presentation, please feel free to type those comments into the chat pod, and we'll try to get to as many as we can at the end during our Q&A. All right, turn it over to Tom.
Thanks, Ben. Appreciate it. So this first statistic you're seeing here is really underlies the entire presentation you're going to see today. It's an extraordinary number. By 2025, which by the way is only 3.5 years away, there are going to be 150 EVs on the U.S. market. And that's, by the way, up from more than fourfold from right now, where there's going to be about 30 some odd by the end of this year. So really, this is what we want to talk about. We really would like to help you navigate this evolving landscape and help you start to think about how EVs will be the catalyst for change. Here's some more interesting info about EVs. By 2025, they will account for 11% of the market, as you see there, but that translates to 1.8 million units registered in 2025. And something that's really frequently under the radar, but people really, including myself, should focus more on is hybrids. Hybrid share by 2025 will be almost twice of EVs at 21%, and that volume 3.5 million units by 2025. So together, we're seeing just 3.5 years from now, a third of the market will be electrified. We're going to go over some more info in these next few minutes, and just to acknowledge that these data are directly from the IHS Markit database based on registration counts. Now, just to reiterate, by 2025, you'll see there basically that we're going to get 11% EV and 21% hybrid for a third of the market. And you want to. One of the reasons we're mentioning this and focusing on this is that the dealers listening are going to want to make sure that their inventory is focused and is adjusted and is in line with what the portfolios are coming from the manufacturers. So moving on then to some more information about EVs. You can see here basically the breakdown of luxury, mainstream, and exotic. And you'll notice here, interestingly, that luxury comprises more of the model count than mainstream does. Sort of unusual since the mainstream market is much bigger. But we've already seen this really with a lot of the intros to date, that a lot of them are upscale from premium brands. And so this will be the case going forward. And I also show Exotic because they are moving to EVs just like the mainstream and the luxury brands are. You can go to the next slide. So this slide is really designed to show you what's trended so far. And you can see here that red line being gasoline, and these are market share metrics. You can see how we've already seen a decline in gasoline share. So really going forward is really just a continuation of what we've seen to date. And what's also interesting here is you can see that green line is EV, which is going up. We're all aware of that, but also that dark blue line, which shows a sharp increase on the right there, that is hybrids. And look at that. We've seen recently a substantial increase in hybrid share, partially due to the fact that some high volume brands are now coming out with models that are actually hybrid. But at any rate, the point of showing this is to really illustrate that what we're going to see going forward is a continuation of what we've already seen in the last 4 years. And then you can go forward to the next slide. Yeah, so this is really to point out the body styles that are coming for EVs. So basically, what we're seeing here is that the SUV body style will really skyrocket, and this is EVs only, over the next few years and really dominate the U.S. market. And you can see sedans below it in blue and then the pickups in orange. This is really very similar to the ICE landscape where we see SUVs now dominating. And just really this points out that the skew towards SUVs will continue and accelerate in the next few years.
So this is interesting stuff. I'm curious. I know we have an active audience here. I wonder if we could poll them quickly and see what's happening with their inventory and EVs. Dave, is that a poll we might have available?
I believe the poll is available. I can't see the screen right now. So once you guys see the screen, I'll be happy to read the questions to you.
Yeah, so what I'm seeing is we're asking for everybody here today, in your opinion, with the EV marketplace growing, what percentage of EV inventory will your dealership likely carry in the next 2 to 3 years? So is that less than 5 to 20%, 20 to 30, or more than 30%?
Very interesting. So we're seeing the answers continue to come in, but we're seeing it looks like the inventory the dealerships will carry in the next 2 to 3 years is really skewed towards 5 to 20% of their inventory. That appears to be the dominant, although it's changing now, but it still remains dominant at about 5 to 20% of the inventory will be EVs, followed by 20 to 30%. And then we're seeing it continues to be dominated by 5 to 20%. Very interesting. And that, frankly, that would continue. That would be pretty much in line with what we see for the forecast for the new vehicle registrations going forward. So that makes a lot of sense, and it really indicates that the inventories will pretty much be in line with what's coming. So we can actually, I think we're at a point where we can move on to the next slide.
So I just kind of wanted to offer on that before we move on, Tom, sorry to interject a bit, but it's so interesting on the SUVs, because as you talk about the growth and what we just saw with inventory adjusting and the predictions for what we think the allocations will be, dealerships thinking about the different ways that they can get in front of their EV audience and target consumers. So as you see kind of the importance of SUVs, this is a segment that has always been one of our most popular segments when we're partnering with the dealerships to get in front of the right audience. That's the power of really combining IHS Markit information with really good audience profiles. And we've always had a number of different segments. So you might have a mainstream SUV buyer to a luxury SUV buyer, and that still exists. And now you just have the added component of EV. So at least at Spectrum Reach, when we're working with dealerships to think about how do you evolve in this new space with EVs, where SUVs are going to be such an important part of that, this is a space we're really comfortable with. And whether it's mainstream or luxury, we have the ability to think about who that audience is and provide some really good insights. So sorry, keep going, Tom.
No, thanks, Kristen. Really appreciate that. So this is a very interesting stat. I don't know how many people are aware that almost 6 of every 10 new vehicles registered in the U.S. now are SUVs. And this is more than 3 times the market share for any other body style. And also, what's not shown on this slide is that in the luxury market, and we categorize 18 brands as luxury brands, a full 70% of new vehicle registrations are SUVs, an extraordinarily high number. Kristen, are your clients' inventory and marketing spend aligned with the body style mix that currently exists?
Yeah, you know, from a marketing budget perspective, many dealers are doing this today. And for those that aren't, we highly recommend it. I have to caveat that today by saying that most dealers are looking through a really unique inventory time today, but speaking to a more regular time with inventory, we do often see alignment with marketing budgets and inventory. A number of years ago, that was a lot more prominent in the truck space, but now it's SUVs and the different category, different segments within that same category, or more speaking to loyalty of SUV owners to get another SUV. What we see there is that marketing budgets often get a carve out for conquest within the similar body style. So in garage data, IHS Markit in garage data is so powerful to really help us understand what the marketplace is and provide valuable insights that do vary a really good amount market to market to our different dealer partners. So when we're talking about growing share for a rooftop, the budget allocation mix is really, really important to get right. And it's not one size fits all. Ben, you're great at talking about this. I know you work with a ton of dealers. Maybe you can speak a little bit more about how we do that specifically.
Yeah, thanks, Kristen. Yeah, you know, for us, you know, we believe in the power of media to get the dealership message and their brand, you know, out to the community. And Jamie, if you want to go to the next slide, you know, I think the way that we think about this, you know, is really all about find, reach, and measure. It's a very simple strategy. Let's identify the buyers that you're trying to find. Let's make sure that we get your message across all screens out there. And then let's give you the tools to make sure that you can understand, you know, what the campaigns delivered and then what the performance of it was. And that's what we do every single day. We believe that a big differentiator of ours is that we have access to first-party viewership insights, aggregate and de-identify, because we believe in privacy compliance and making sure we're keeping our customers' data private. But when we aggregate that and then we pair that with bulk automotive solutions from IHS Markit, that's really powerful because we can go beyond demographics, right? We go beyond just adults 25-54. And so when we start looking at our premium data partners and bringing that together, we can build audiences across a broad range of attributes, behaviors, lifestyles, and then we use that information, then target buyers on video ads across all screens, whether they're looking for, you know, an ICE vehicle, an SUV, an EV, whatever it may be. We can help our dealers do that because our job is to connect buyers with your message as they watch TV programming, live sports and news, you know, watching the NBA playoffs. They could be streaming through a connected TV. They could be binge watching their favorite shows on demand or shopping online. Bottom line, the goal, get buyers into your dealership and do it in a targeted way. Go ahead and go to the next slide. One of the things that we talk about a lot is geography. So one of the things that we found in talking to dealers especially when it comes to EV, is that demand varies by geography, right? By market, by state, really depends on what the demand is like. And so for us, being able to zone in and really target on the audience that you want at a market level is something that we take pride in. So it starts with TV and doing zone targeting. That makes TV geo-targeting, right? That we can target a specific area of the market. We have some great data that we incorporate from IHS Markit that looks at what are the zip codes that are driving 75% of your car sales and truck and vehicle sales. Let's target those areas. And when we add streaming and online video, we can even get down to a zip code level. That's pretty powerful because, when you zone in like that, you can maximize your reach potential on the many screens that buyers are using to watch content. Again, efficiency and effectiveness. We call it increased localization and personalization, right? Customize your messaging. We've got a dealer in Austin, for example, Volkswagen dealership. They've got a great ad that says whether you're looking for an SUV to fit a family of 7, or you want power and technology, and you're really interested in the new ID4, they've got it all. And so those are the kinds of things that we can help craft that, not only in terms of targeting, but even creative with our in-house production studio called Kernel. So lots of cool things. Now, I will do a little segue because we've talked a lot about SUVs, but there's all different types of body styles. So I'll go back to Tom to talk a little bit about how do we focus in on some niche brands as well.
Thanks, Ben. As the SUV market share continues to grow, manufacturers and brands are dividing this huge piece of the pie into quote-unquote subsegments that they can market more efficiently to. This trend will migrate in both ICE and EV fuel types. An example of an emerging microsegment is what's called, or could be called, the true off-road mainstream SUV. And this category now includes just 2 models shown there on the screen, the Jeep Wrangler and the Ford Bronco, which is being released right now. We're also seeing other microsegments forming as time goes on, and more will appear both in ICE and in EV fuel types. Kristen, can you target these types of car buyers and light truck buyers as well?
Absolutely. I've worked with a few dealerships already that were ready to really get in front of this. The Bronco was an excellent example of that. One simple tip I do recommend, and I saw work a couple times to support media investment, is to make sure that you have content available on your site to be searched and indexed as soon as possible. A lot of times that's well before you actually have any inventory, but that's going to make sure that you're showing up when you are creating demand and talking to users who are perfect for these niche kind of vehicles. But when you're capturing that data, it's helpful for you, and it can really help inform your overall marketing plans. But I liken this in some ways. I know it's a lot less niche specific, but think about how Ford did that with the migration from sedan buyers to larger vehicles. They were able to be successful by really knowing who the buyer was. And so this space is very similar. We will probably sound like a broken record by the end of this, but marketing is really all about the data that you have behind everything that you want to get done, and your ability to find the right audience and then to reach them and measure how successful you are is at the heart of everything that we are always talking to dealerships about at Spectrum Reach Automotive. So I can also show you a little bit on the next slide how we kind of bring that to life. This is one of our buyer profiles. So the information here is custom to Spectrum Reach Automotive and powered by amazing IHS Markit data, as well as a couple of other data sources. But profiles like this tell us who we're talking to and how exactly we find your future buyers. So it looks at data from a media consumption perspective. How do they spend time with media? What kind of shows are they watching? To more about the household. So are there children in the home? What kind of income is typical for that vehicle type? And then other really important things like how much are they willing to spend on a payment? And how are their credit scores? What is that in terms of an indication of their purchasing power? So all of these attributes make up this profile that we connect to our aggregated and anonymized viewership data so that we're able to say, oh, this buyer that you see here, Here's how and where you reach them and connect with them through video solutions and tell your story. So this kind of information really helps you reach buyers with confidence and ultimately sell more cars. So the data sometimes opens up really interesting marketing angles that we haven't previously thought of. And take this one, for example. A little over a quarter of truck buyers are multicultural households. So that's an example of a road that we might dig a little bit deeper on. And in fact, let's do that. So we have another survey, and we'll ask you guys some questions. And Ben, I'm very curious when the results are in to get your take on this.
Yeah, please. We encourage everybody to put your answers, click your answers there. One of the question that we have is, what percentage of your marketing budget is allocated to target multicultural auto buyers specifically? And we'll give it about 20 seconds here, give you some time to jump in and answer. So far, it's looking like it's either probably about 10%. I know a lot of this is dependent on geography, but right now it's about 10% so far. So I think this is actually a good thing, because I think what we really want to talk about today is really the importance of reaching the multicultural buyer. So why is it important? The reality is the population in America has changed, and it continues to be more and more diverse. And according to the US Census data as recently as 2019, over 50% of the population in key big markets are represented by multicultural audiences. So, being able to reach multicultural buyers in a targeted, and this is really a critical point, in a culturally relevant way represents a significant opportunity for the growth of our business. And we've seen a lot of dealers already, whether it's co-op for specific target audiences, or they have specific strategies for that depending where they're at. Because what they realize is, the combined purchase power for Hispanic, Black Americans, and Asian is more than $3.8 trillion. The other thing that we talk to our dealers a lot about is being able to look at these different segments of audiences. We can see increase in different platform options and how they consume media. And so we've seen, especially in the last year, specifically the enormous growth in streaming video, as well as online consumption, especially as it relates to multicultural audiences. So to talk a little bit more about who those multicultural buyers are, I'm going to go back to Tom to give us some insights.
Thanks, Ben. So as you can see here on this bar chart, we track these three major ethnicities. We actually track several others, but these are the three dominant ethnicities. And you can see this is the actual retail market share in the U.S. over the last 12 months from April 2020 through March 2021. You can see that Hispanic is over 15% of the market. Black American is almost 9%, and Asian is 5%. So, and one other stat that's not actually on the slide, an extraordinary stat, is that the anticipated growth over just 1 year from 2020 to 2021 of the Hispanic population is 26%, extraordinary. Put that growth together with their beginning market share here, and you can see why Hispanics is a very, very important part of the market. Kristen, are your dealers speaking with these multicultural buyers in your market area? I mean, how aware are they of the preferences of each of these different ethnicities?
Yeah, I believe they are. So the poll results are interesting where budget allocations are going. But, this is already happening with the EV buyer. Though the multicultural component is evolving as the marketplace grows and does absolutely depend on where you are in the country today. So it's cropping up in different geographic regions, but helping dealers grow share with any particular ethnicity can be achieved today. And that's something we help clients with all the time. we do approach it a couple of different ways, but one that comes to mind is I partner with a multi-rooftop single brand dealer. And what we did was looked at the geographic locations of all of their rooftops. And then we analyzed the ethnic makeup of the geography nearest each dealership. So once we knew that, we started to segment their buys by rooftop and use the different make model, the popularity of the make model information to influence what the creative messaging would be. So one dealership might have primarily a truck spot while another might have a compact sedan. But doing that variation really worked because when they shifted to that approach, you could see their market share increase within a few months, and they were outpacing their brand as well. Now, that particular example was in a market without a large Asian demographic, let's say, but there were key make and model differences that we saw with Hispanic and Black audiences. So we do definitely see differences in purchase behavior as well as some other indicators like loyalty. And Tom, I think you have some good data that speaks just to that, right?
Yes, Kristen, thanks very much. Yes, so these data on the screen show the brand loyalty of these three different ethnicities, and brand loyalty being defined as, for instance, if a Black American household had a vehicle, a brand in the garage, and they came back to market, did they acquire the same brand or not? We refer to that as brand loyalty. And you can see here that there's quite a range, actually, with Black Americans being at almost 55%, Hispanics at 53%, but then Asians down at, at just 46.5%. This is a huge metric, a very, very important metric. Loyal customers really provide the base, the foundation for the brands as well as for the dealers. Without them, they wouldn't be in business. And so having these numbers be competitive, having your brand loyalty be as high, being able to keep your customers is crucial on an ongoing basis, and partially for what I just said, but also because everybody's trying to conquest everybody else. So you need to protect that base of your brand loyal households. And then we've been able to, if we could go to the next slide, we're able actually to show the most popular brands and ethnicities for these, and models for these ethnicities. And you can see there on the left that the most popular brand for Black Americans is Toyota. And you can see the 5 most popular models. And this, again, is for the 12 months from April 2020 through March 2021. You can see with Black Americans, the Camry, the RAV4, the Accord, the F-Series, and the Ram lead the volume there. And you can see that for Asians, Toyota, again, is number 1. And this, by the way, is looking at retail deliveries. You can see that the top models are, again, RAV4, CR-V, Model Y, Camry, and the Lexus RX. And then lastly, for Hispanics, again, Toyota leads the way. And the most popular models are the RAV4, the Silverado, the Civic, the Corolla, and the Camry. So anyway, I just wanted to ask on this subject, Kristen, do you have anything you'd like to add?
Well, it's clear Toyota is getting something right. That's for sure, being on top of the list across the board here. But, I mentioned it a little in the last example I gave, but what we're able to do in partnerships with our clients is look at their marketplace in their geography and create a custom plan to steal or grow share that I think can help anyone move up the ranks on this chart. But often it does start with geography. So making sure that you're really owning your brand, start with your backyard and then get bigger and bigger from there. But use the power of geographically specific media that really helps your dollars go far. And that's really always been the beauty of cable television and online and now streaming. But you don't have to own your entire DMA to really grow share in your PMA. And I think that's one way that you can think about this in a little bit more bite-sized pieces. But targeting a multicultural audience with a specific message is a really smart way to go about that. Ben, I went through the truck buyer profile example a little bit earlier, but I'm wondering if you can walk us through an example that speaks a little bit more to multicultural.
Yeah, absolutely, Kristen. And actually, this hits home for me. So I know it may not sound like it. My last name is Van Horn, but I am actually of Hispanic descent, and I'm sitting in San Antonio right now. And, I've had some compelling conversations with dealers about reaching the Hispanic market. And the first thing that we always talk about is it starts with language. It's not only the language of the community, whether they're Spanish dominant or like myself, third generation, who primarily speaks English but is bilingual, is also thinking about what is the language you're using to speak to them. And when we build these profiles, we're able to show is not only just, the Hispanic tends to skew a little bit younger. We're seeing them, there's more indexing high for families and kids in the home and things like that. But also kind of how they watch video, right? How they watch television. I had a conversation with a dealer in South Texas recently about the fact that, he knows that a lot of people are watching, Telemundo and Univision, but he wanted to expand from that to be able to get more frequency, right? And also find other ways to reach those consumers. And I told him a story about my mother-in-law, right? She's immigrant from Mexico. She speaks Spanish. She watches her novelas every night. But she's probably spends more time watching CNN, HGTV, and Discovery. And so we're able to build a strategy using these buyer profiles to target their PMA and look at broadening out the audience base and networks that not only reaches those same viewers that are watching Univision, Telemundo, but also to find new ways to talk to them, even using Spanish language copy on English networks, depending on the geography of markets you're in. So it's been a really great way for them to think differently about their strategy. The other thing that we talk a lot to our dealers about is how much Hispanic audiences have embraced streaming video. And as you'll see on the next slide, the Hispanic community is actually spending almost an hour and a half to 2 hours more time per week streaming than the average U.S. adult, across the country. And so what that means is not only do you need to have a streaming strategy when you're targeting Hispanic audiences, but you're going to see more effective campaigns because we're seeing higher lift when you add streaming to your TV campaigns as well as online video to be able to make sure you're tapping that audience. So, we've helped a lot of dealers talk to us. How can we help you take that profile and activate that strategy in your market? So I think as we kind of near towards the end here, if we go to the next slide, we talk a lot with our dealers about working inside out. And what I mean by that is, taking your brand promise, right? And making sure that you're using it not only inside the dealership with your staff, with your entire organization, but outside into the community as well, right? And then using owned and paid media to push that message, to amplify that message to your customers that you want, the communities that you want to serve, in specific areas and the part of the PMA that you want to reach. Now is that time to start reweighting and rethinking your media mix to better reflect people's changing media consumption, right? As more auto shoppers spend more time streaming video and online, in addition to the amount of time they're spending watching TV. The other thing is, reminder, again, these communities are more diverse and need to be reached in a different way and also in a culturally relevant way. And there's really no better way, we think, than working with your local TV and internet company like Spectrum Reach Automotive to understand how to reach these audiences and get in front of them. So again, to wrap up, let's revisit what Tom shared back at the beginning. 11% market share for EVs by 2025. Over 150 new models that are coming out in the next few years, as well as that doubling of share for hybrid vehicles by 2025 and beyond. So the questions that you need to be thinking about is, what does this mean for your dealership when it comes to reaching those future buyers as their habits and perceptions are changing in your communities? There may be some quicker changes in your market than others. How are you getting your teams ready for that? But regardless of the fuel types of the vehicles that are on your lot, Spectrum Reach Automotive can help you connect to those buyers. And our partnership with Tom and IHS Markit can really help you make that connection and do it in a more targeted way. So I'm going to leave you with a few takeaways. Jamie, if you want to go to the next slide. 4 things to remember, right? Take an action item after this. Number 1, how are you aligning and thinking about your inventory according to these trends that are coming that were shared by Tom in the presentation today? Number 2, making sure that your sales teams are trained to sell all fuel types, and they're speaking to all customers based on their, cycle of life and what they're looking for. Next, check that you make sure that you're using precise targeting to reach those qualified buyers that you want to reach, and use that power of multi-screen media to get buyers to act today. So before we go to a Q&A, I just wanted to make this offer to you all. We talked a lot about audience targeting. And if you're interested in getting a custom auto intender profile sheet or a multicultural audience profile sheet for your dealership, just reach out to us. And also you can type your name and email into the Q&A box, and we'll make sure to get that info to you as soon as we can. Thanks, everybody. I'm going to turn it back over to Dave to get us through the Q&A.
Okay, thanks very much, Ben, and thank you, Kristen and Tom, as well. We have questions lined up, and we are going to go get to them right away. Let's start with this one. It's about BMW, and it says, BMW has dedicated salespeople, and by default, so does Tesla. Different franchise network, obviously, but many salespeople make more when they sell an internal combustion engine vehicle, that's ICE, for those who wonder, as it can go faster than explaining all you need to know about EVs. So do you believe that this issue is being addressed within the dealer networks that you deal with? I can toss that one up to all of you, because I think it's relevant to all 3 of you.
Well, I can, this is Tom, I can, those trends will evolve over time. And as EVs become more plentiful and make up a greater and greater proportion of the dealer's inventory, you will see the gross profits will go up on the EVs, frankly, out of necessity when the ICE vehicles eventually go away. But I think at the beginning of any trend, you see this type of situation where they maybe are not as popular as you would like them to be. So maybe the grosses get compressed. But again, over time, there will be a full range of EVs from the lower end price-wise to the very high end. And I think both the manufacturers and the dealers themselves will make sure that that there is money in it for the salesman, so that the salesman will sell them. So again, I'm a real believer that over time that will evolve to the point where in the long term we will see the grosses approach those of the ICE vehicles.
Ben and Kristen, will we leave that with Tom, or would you like to elaborate on that?
No, I think I would echo Tom, right? It's still early. I think what we found with a lot of dealers is part of that is, not only are they looking at incentives, but just the wait and see approach, right? And again, the demand is variable by market. And, I live in Austin, and there's, I think a greater share of EVs out there. So, they may be looking at it differently than another dealer somewhere else. But this is early going. I think the importance of this is where the trends are going and just getting prepared for it. And those are the conversations that are just going to be ongoing for a while, for sure.
A question for you, Tom, just about your definition, because we know that vehicle segments can be a pretty complicated area. When you count SUVs, are you including crossover utility vehicles, CUVs, in that count?
Yes, we are. We have been, various organizations have been separating traditional body-on-frame SUVs from crossovers. But as time has gone on, that line between the two has blurred, so that we are now really combining them. And there's one overall category of sport utilities, whether they be unibody or body and frame. So the answer to the question is yes, it's one big bucket that includes both.
Okay, and this questioner shrewdly anticipated that, but just wanted some verification for that. We'll stick with you, Tom. We have heard a lot of noise about the possibility of Chinese-based competitors coming to the U.S. Do you see any significant share of this SUV market being held by Chinese automakers? And let's assume we're going beyond Volvo for that one.
Right. Well, if the question is referencing Chinese branded vehicles coming into the U.S., We do not have that in the forecast for the near term. And actually, across the entire industry, looking forward for the next at least 4 years, there's not we do not have a Chinese brand on the forecast. In terms of Chinese content and being assembled in China, as you mentioned, Dave, I mean, the Volvo now and also a couple of Cadillacs, et cetera. So that right now on the market, there are some vehicles that are actually assembled in China. But again, vehicles with a Chinese brand, A, we don't see that in the next few years. And also B, that has been something that has been rumored for a long time, coming in X years, coming in Y years, but they're still not there yet. So again, in the near term, we don't have that.
Question for Ben and Kristen. What's the difference between streaming zip code targeting versus TV zone targeting?
Kristen, you want to take it? Yeah.
Sure. Simplest way to describe it is think of a little technology. The beauty of cable zone targeting is that you take a whole marketplace. I'm sitting out of Cleveland, Ohio. So you take all of the Cleveland, Akron area, and you can break that into small around your dealership locations that don't include the whole makeup of that geography, but is not necessarily tied to variable locations. Streaming TV, you can make any kind of variable location combination that you would want, usually made up of zip codes or a radius around a center area. Ben, anything to add?
No, I always talk about, TV is kind of one to many, right? So we run a TV spot in a specific zone. We can reach everyone in that area, all of our subscriber base, which is great. And we can segment that, like you said, in different sections of the Cleveland, Akron area. With streaming TV, it's one-to-one. We're targeting, down to, specific, devices and delivery, the digital delivery. What's really awesome is those worlds are converging right now. So that targetability is just continuing to evolve. But there just gives us different ways that we can target based on the technology and the way people are watching TV. So.
Okay, Tom, we're going to ask you to put on your federal policy hat right now. But this questioner asks, the current infrastructure barely supports the existing market of EVs. Do you know of a concrete plan, both industry-wide as well as in terms of federal policy, to support infrastructure growth at an 11% market share of EVs by 2025? Basically, can the landscape support the projections here?
No, that's a good question. And I think what we're going to have to do is I'm going to refer that to a colleague of mine who's more knowledgeable about that, and I'd be glad to get back to that person. It's a good question. It's a very relevant question. I know the administration is proposing X number of billions of dollars to be devoted to a development infrastructure, a charging station infrastructure. I can't really comment beyond that. I will say though that those model counts are not, to be candid, those model counts that I showed you, if anything, are low. So there will be some pressure just from the fact that there is a deluge of models coming from across all the brands. There will be pressure to increase the charging structure, but I'd have to get back to you with specifics, which I'd be glad to do if I can get a name and address or email address.
Okay, we've got that. That's question number 30, Lauren, for our records, and we'll get back to Stephen with an answer to that question. Of the 11% forecast, Tom, for EVs by 2025, sticking with that figure, do you have any projections on what percentage of that might be autonomous vehicles?
Oh, might be autonomous vehicles.
Yeah.
Well, it depends on how you define autonomous. And if you're talking about level 5, 0, if you're talking about level 4, I'd have to get the numbers for you. But the percentages at this point, the forecasted percentages are very, very low. I'm going out on a limb here where I say it's under 1%. I don't have that. That's an estimate on my part. But again, let me get back to that person who asked that. But I'm confident in saying that if you're talking about fully autonomous vehicles, they're not around the corner. And we've seen recently some comments that they may be, frankly, decades away. So in the near term, a very, very small number. And also in the open environment, in a non-contained environment, I would be surprised if there are any. Unfortunately, I'm sorry, I'm also going to have to get back to that person with an autonomous vehicle count that we would have by 2025 if it is above zero.
Okay, thank you very much. You flashed the slide showing the loyalty rates of the various demographic groups, with Black at 55%, Hispanic at 53%, Asian at 46%. What's the industry average and what's the Caucasian average? Does anybody have that figure handy?
Yeah, and I regret I didn't mention that at the time, but the industry average nationally right now is about 53.5%. And what was the other question, Dave?
Well, just basically for the industry average, and do you have something for Caucasian specifically?
Oh, I don't have that in front of me. I can get that. I would guess, given that the Caucasian is 60 to 7% of the industry, I would guess that it's somewhere in the vicinity of 53, 55%. But again, I'd be glad to get that and get it back to the person.
Okay. Interesting scenario here, perhaps for you, Tom, perhaps for you, Ben and Kristen, but we saw those two very interesting charts that mentioned the preponderance of Toyota vehicles. But as we all know, the F-Series is the #1 truck nationwide, but it's not in the top 5 for Asians or Hispanics in terms of loyalty. What can marketers to those demographic segments do, at least from a Ford point of view, of getting the Ford vehicle back to where it stands, at least in terms of national ranking?
Well, I can just comment on that briefly and then let Kristen and Ben pursue that. But the Ford F-Series indeed is the most popular vehicle in the country, but that is based on total new sales or new vehicle registrations, which include fleet. All of the loyalty data that was displayed today and all the loyalty data that IHS Markit provides to the industry are based on pure retail. And so frankly, the F-Series and Silverado and Ram, those numbers come down a lot when you look at retail only. And that's not a secret, that's commonly known. But I will say that in terms of brands' overall performance on brand loyalty in the industry across all ethnicities, that Toyota, Chevrolet, and Ford are within about a point of each other. And so they go back and forth as to who is above which others, but they're all basically the same. So again, just to clarify, all the loyalty data, because loyalty is really, the point of loyalty is to provide information and insights into consumer behavior, and consumers, comprise the retail part of the market. And frankly, I mean, I don't think a lot of people are interested in what the loyalty is of Hertz rent-a-car. So hopefully that helps to answer the question.
It certainly does. Thanks, Tom. And we're going to stick with the loyalty questions, but just in a different frame. How loyal do you see EV owners being to EVs? Have you seen owners go back to internal combustion engines because of issues having to do with range or having to plug in and recharge and all of that?
No, it's a great question. And actually, we do track what we call fuel type loyalty, which is you had a certain fuel type in the garage, you return to market, did you acquire the same fuel type? And we're able to track that for all the major fuel types over time. And the patterns are very, very interesting. What we've seen is that the EV loyalty, so I had an electric vehicle in the garage, what percent when I returned to market got another electric vehicle, was in the 30s and 40s up until about mid-17, 2018, and now it's gone up, so it's in the mid-50s, and that's very impressive. So now more electric vehicle owners, when they return to market, are getting another one than not getting another one. And also, by the way, just as a footnote, we were asked if that was just purely driven by Tesla, so we removed Tesla from the numbers, and lo and behold, it was almost exactly the same. I will also add another interesting tidbit here, which is that we've looked at the percent of EV owners who go to another fuel type when they come back to, specifically how many EV households leave EV and go to gasoline. And the number is in the vicinity of between 30 and 35%. That is a very interesting statistic, because what that means is that you have these EV owners who are actually leaving And that's the last thing any manufacturer wants. Here we have a huge number coming. The last thing we want to do is have them leave. So that's something that I think manufacturers and brands have to be aware of and focus on, is how to keep those EV households in the electric vehicle bucket. I hope that answers the question.
It does. A lot of questions on this topic drilling in, so we're going to keep on going, Tom. Any data on EV buyers who buy versus lease?
Yes, it depends. Depends on the model. Right now, there's somewhere between 15 and 20 EVs on the market right now, and there's a huge price range. At the upper end, where you have the two Teslas and you have the e-tron, the Taycan, actually they tend to be more purchased. But at the other end, with the Kias, the Hyundais, the Chevrolet Bolt, the Nissan Leaf, etc., it tends to be skewed towards lease. And one of the reasons for that is that those brands all have captive finance sources with which they can offer very attractive lease terms, including lease monthly payments that are way lower than loan monthly payments. So you'll see Nissan, Chevrolet, Hyundai, Kia, and VW heavily skewed towards lease with those models.
Any figure on how long EV owners or lessees stick with those vehicles before upgrading to a new model?
You know, Dave, that's a difficult one, because a lot of the EVs and the models I just mentioned are quite new, and so they've actually not been on the market long enough. So I do not have that. For the Leaf and the Bolt, I could certainly get that. But if you think about it, the others, well, also the high-end Teslas, I could get it. But again, that's something I could get the length of ownership and get back to that person who asked the question.
Let's move back to Ben and Kristen. What, in your view, is the best media mix to reach multicultural buyers?
So I'll take this one, Kristen. You know, I think the best media mix is having kind of a multi-platform strategy. So I think one of the things I shared earlier is typically multicultural, and like even specifically Hispanic, tends to over-index versus the average with online usage, streaming usage, and whatnot. So I think just making sure that you're looking at consumption, and being able to plan for that is, trying to get that reach across multiple platforms. So again, TV, streaming, online, that's right media mix. I think depending on your budget, Kristen touched on a little bit, we look at allocation is going to really be determined by, other variables like your geography, your target area, but even, other things like lifestyle and, age. So for example, you're going to have a probably different strategy if you're targeting, kind of an entry buyer, younger, than you would, kind of maybe a more established kind of an older buyer. The way they watch, and consume media is just very different. So we can help you with those profiles to build that strategy. But multi-screen, make sure you get your message out across multiple platforms is the best way to do it. Make everything work together.
Okay. Big picture question here, perhaps for you, Ben and Kristen, maybe Tom. As you know, OEMs are investing heavily in the digital customer experience. Do you see that as a threat at all to the dealer franchise model? Or let's flip it the other way. What is the best way for franchise dealers to ensure their longevity and the continuance of the model, given OEM investment in the digital customer experience?
Look, this is my opinion. I mean, I think what we talked a lot about earlier is connecting communities. I mean, we understand how important it is for dealers in their communities that someone can come in and have that personal attention, right? We talked about that inside out model, which is your brand promise, what you're doing in the community, not only in the dealership, but out. I think when the digital model is that, there's different ways to make it more convenient to buy, to get information. We talk a lot about driving information to the website so people can see what their options are. But at the end of the day, We want them to go to the dealership. We want them to build that relationship with the dealer. I don't think that that's going to go away anytime soon. So it's just about blending convenience with that connection to the community, I think is what, we hear a lot from our dealers and what's most important, to them.
Getting back to you, Tom, you talked a lot about the appeal of SUVs, and in your view at IHS, why do people like them so much? And do you think that there's any risk that the bloom could come off the rose? We saw how minivans were once all the rage, and now they're largely shunned. Any risk there for SUVs going down that same route?
Well, if you look at the volumes, minivan at its height was about 8 or 9% of the market. And SUVs, as a reminder, now are between 50 and 60% of the market. And some people said quite 10 years ago that SUVs, that the crossovers were a fad. Those people really are not saying that anymore. It's really the benefits for the consumer. So, I mean, the reality is that the buyer likes the SUV. Why do they like the SUV? Many reasons. First of all, the higher driving position. Whether people admit it or not, the people like being up higher versus everybody else on the road. It's a reality. And particularly if you go back down to a sedan, you feel like you're driving on the road. But so the high driving position, but also the flexibility, the versatility of the SUV or the crossover, in that you can go off-road, you can tow, you can have 3 rows, you can have captain's chairs, you can have all the versatility is extraordinary. So I think it's a basic, law of economics that if you put out something that the consumer likes, you'll buy it, and the consumer likes the whole concept, and they just like it more in the sedan. I have some friends who they had sedans all along, and they purchased the Ford Escape, and they love it because they don't have to go down and go up to get in and out, so on. It's right at their level, and so they're going to get another Escape. So. Again, I think it's all of the various possibilities, the features of the SUV, the concept put together. And I will also say that the manufacturers have responded in an extraordinary way, far beyond how they ever would have responded to minivans. So you now see a range of size, price, technology, capabilities, et cetera, that is past where sedans even were. So they're here to stay, and I don't see on any horizon where they would be a fad or going away.
Okay, thanks, Tom, and Ben and Kristen as well. We've got the questions to take this past the top of the hour, but the minute hand is looming large, and so we're going to have to draw a close to the questions with that. You did ask a question that we didn't get a chance to answer. Spectrum Reach and IHS Markit will generously follow up by email. Thanks again to Ben, to Kristen, to Tom, to Spectrum Reach Automotive, and IHS Markit for bringing us this presentation. Thanks to all of you for joining us, and on behalf of everyone at Automotive News, have a great rest of your day. So long.